It's over. It's finally over. We can breathe. We can relax as Blue Jay fans. There will be no more trades made. The trade deadline is passed and the Blue Jays are finished, and they did a great amount of work over these past couple of days. They got a lot of prospects, they restocked their system, and they traded away some players that we did not expect to see traded away. And the latest one was Kevin Kiermaier, who is now on the way to the Los Angeles Dodgers. He said he's going to retire at the end of the season. I suspect him to be their fourth outfielder and provide some defense off the bench. And the Blue Jays are getting back a pitcher that's going to eat some innings because there aren't many pitchers left on this roster. So I'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And the Blue Jays made another trade. This was their final trade of the trade deadline. And you know what? Here we go. This is it. This is the roster that we're going to be seeing for the rest of the season. Some good news. Joey Loperfido, one of the headliners of the Yusei Kikuchi trade, has been called up. He's not starting tonight, but it won't be long before we see him. And it won't be long until we see a lot of these prospects just start to get some runway from now until the end of the season. The Jays have made their intentions clear. They're not trying to make the playoffs. They sold off pretty much every asset that they possibly could have sold off, and now they're in retool mode for at least the rest of the season. Who knows what's going to happen this offseason and the approach that they're going to take there. But Nick, we're going to see a lot of young players play. We're going to see a lot of exciting young players get a chance, and that's even more evident now that Kevin Kiermaier is not going to be taking away at bats from these younger guys. But before we say anything about the trade, I wish him the best. And I wish him all the best in retirement. He was a consummate professional his entire time here in Toronto, and it just didn't work out in the last year. It wasn't his fault that the Blue Jays were not in a playoff spot and not contending for a World Series. He's partly to blame, but Ross Atkins is more to blame for bringing him back. I wish him all the best. Great guy on the field. Seems like a great guy off the field as well. And he's going to be missed in that Blue Jays clubhouse. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, and he loved playing for the Toronto Blue Jays. He obviously re-signed this offseason. So, yeah, shout out to him. And hopefully he can go and do some things. Maybe go win a World Series. Not that I want the Dodgers to win a World Series, but I want to see Kevin Kiermaier have some success there. But, Peter, it's over. The crazy day is over. They didn't trade Chad Green. We might get into that in a future video, but Chad Green is not traded. Very surprising. But, Peter, we can all take a deep breath. We're in a new era now of Blue Jays baseball, at least for the rest of the year. I'm excited to watch games again. We get to see all the young guys play. I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Clase gets called up sometime soon. But regarding the trade, it was a bit of a buzzer beater. The Blue Jays traded Kevin Kiermaier to the Dodgers for a very familiar face in Ryan Yarbrough, and we remember all the years him with the Rays where he pitched against the Blue Jays and did some things. And Peter, he was DFA by the Dodgers, but he's having a pretty decent year. He's 3.74 ERA in 32 games. He's a long relief guy, 67 innings. The Jays, honestly, a pretty good trade for both sides here. Makes total sense for the Blue Jays. Get a guy who, quite frankly, their bullpen is absolutely depleted right now, and they bring in a guy who can eat tons of innings and can be a guy who literally just eats innings. That's what they get. And then the Dodgers get a very elite defender to help them push for a World Series. And it works for both sides. I love the trade. And Ross Atkins traded every single player on an expiring deal. Every single one.
Yeah, he did. And he had to. And I didn't think he would, but he did. So good for Ross Atkins. Good for the Blue Jays fan base. They're turning over a new leaf. And I think this signifies handing over the team to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's his team now. Let him see what he can do next year. And I think an extension is in the works. They must have sat down with Vladdy and laid out the plan with him and said, look, we want you here for the long term. We think that you're going to be a big part of this team going forward. And these young players are going to help out in your pursuit of a World Series. I think that's what they've laid out with him. And I think that's the direction we're headed. If that were to happen soon, or this offseason, the minute that the offseason starts for the Blue Jays, I think this would be a good season, and Ross Atkins has redeemed himself. That's all I'm going to say. And it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of money to keep Vladdy in town, but he said all the right things. He's playing the right way right now. and he's playing like an MVP, and he's outslugging a lot of guys that are at the top of those MVP leaderboards. So I want to see him back, and I think the Jays are really headed in the right direction now. Their direction is clear. They're no longer in this middle ground that they're trying to compete with a lackluster roster. They're going to give these young guys opportunities to play, and I'm very excited for it.
We get to see tons of prospects for the rest of the year, and it's a sin that it's honestly a shame. Aurelvis Martinez, had he not gone down with his PED suspension, we would have got to see 2.5 months of him at really stress-free ball to see what he could do, but we'll ignore that for a little bit. But like you mentioned, Peter, here, Joey Loperfido has been reported or selected to the Major League team and is reporting there and will be active tonight. Maybe we see him in a pinch hit duty. Who knows? I doubt it because he's not in the starting lineup. But it's a new leaf, a new era for the Toronto Blue Jays. And this trade kind of signifies that in the sense of, all the signings that they made this offseason. It kind of signifies some of the failures that Ross Atkins had in that front. But on the other side of things, they traded away every single one of them. IKF gone, Kevin Kiermaier gone. Chad Green's the only one, and some fans are upset about that. We might have a video on that in the future. There's lots of videos to make, but clearly they didn't get a package they liked, which is very surprising considering the trade deadline this season. But maybe they want to hold on to him, and I still think they're going to try to contend in 2025. They might make a big splash in free agency given all the salary that they've been able to shed here this trade deadline, even though they retained some in a couple of the deals, the Turner and the IKF deal, I believe. But yeah, Peter, do you have any quick thoughts on Chad Green not being traded? We might dive into it in a future video, but it's a bit upsetting, but I can't be upset. A+ deadline anyways.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's upsetting. It's just maybe our expectations were unrealistic because the Padres do things unlike any other team, and they traded 12 of their top 15 prospects away in the past month or so, including the Luis Arias trade, including the trade
trades
for the Marlins reliever. What's his
Too many
name?
names are mixed up. It's one of the
Yeah,
Rogers.
well, anyways, they trade of their top 15 prospects coming into the year, 12 of those players have been traded. That's how aggressive they've been, which is super weird to me considering that they traded away Juan Soto, a generational hitter, away in the offseason. I don't understand what the approach is there. They're constantly trying to buy and they don't care about prospects. AJ Preller does not care about prospects. He's made that clear, but they got what they needed. I think it was Tanner Scott, the reliever that they went out and got, and they got the players that they needed. So I don't think there was a team that was going to match the aggressiveness of the San Diego Padres. And maybe we were a little bit fooled by the return that the Marlins got in exchange for Tanner Scott and thinking that the Blue Jays could get something similar-ish for Chad Green. I don't know if that was ever on the table.
I think if it was on the table,
but
they would have traded him.
maybe, yeah. I don't think anything remotely close to that was on the table. So maybe the Blue Jays just said, all right, well, we still need to have some pitchers on this roster, so why not keep Chad Green around? And again, you need guys to field the team as well. Like you can't just trade all 26 guys on your active roster because then you're in deep crap and you don't have a team tonight against the Baltimore Orioles. So I think the Blue Jays thought of it that way and said, look, we've done enough. We've restocked the farm. How valuable is another 30th ranked prospect from an organization going to be in exchange for, limping across the finish line the rest of the season? I don't know. Maybe that's the way that they valued it.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately they value him being on the team next year. They value the fact that if they're going to compete next year, he's a very solid reliever. And his peripherals aren't great. Like his expected ERA is in the 4s or something like that. So maybe other teams saw that as well and were a bit hesitant. And of course, the injury things I think is a big part playing here where, he's been injured last little bit, past couple of years. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know what your thoughts are on the deadline. The trade that Kevin Kiermaier is now out of Toronto. A very new look Toronto Blue Jays team, even though they still have some of the same core pieces. But what's going to be the big teller is what happens going forward. But thank you guys for watching. See you soon.